Welcome to today's Explainer. We spend so much time studying biology from our own very human perspective. We take the rules of our existence completely for granted, right? Carbon is the building block, water is the solvent, oxygen is the fuel. It's just how things work. But today, we're going to do something absolutely fascinating. We are going to look at our own biology through a completely alien lens. We're going to see just how incredibly fragile and, frankly, statistically absurd we truly are. We are totally flipping the mirror today.
To really get into this headspace, I want you to imagine stepping outside on a crisp morning. The storm clouds are pale yellow, heavy drops of liquid hydrogen fluoride are lashing against your window, and the thermometer reads a balmy, comfortable 52 degrees below 0 Celsius. Now, for us, that environment is immediate horrific death, but for the inhabitants of the hypothetical planet Aethelgard, that is a perfect, life-giving morning.
Section 1. Meet Homo silico-fluoris. Okay, let's dive into this. Meet Vaelen. He's a biological architect, and he naturally breathes violently reactive fluorine gas just to survive. To him, our liquid water is a complete chemical paradox. On his world, Aethelgard, water ice is so frozen it's literally as hard as granite. They mine it with thermal lasers to build their towering cities. And those metals we rely on every single day, iron, copper, aluminum, if you expose those to his fluorine-rich atmosphere, they spontaneously burst into brilliant white flames. Only noble metals like gold or platinum actually survive there. This completely flips how life is constructed from the ground up. Vaelen doesn't use carbon. To him, carbon is toxic soot. Instead, his biochemical scaffolding is forged from alternating chains of silicon and oxygen, shielded in an impenetrable armor of fluorine. He is thermodynamically invincible. Compare that to us. To Vaelen, our biology, based on this flimsy carbon backbone with liquid water as a blood solvent, is a laughable, highly unstable fringe theory. To really appreciate his design, let's look at his skeleton. Instead of our brittle calcium phosphate bones, Vaelen has a rib cage forged of dense, crystalline calcium fluoride. And what's absolutely incredible here is that these bones are piezoelectric. That means instead of just snapping under pressure, every single time Vaelen takes a step, the mechanical stress literally generates microcurrents of electricity that course through his body. This naturally guides his cellular repair and stimulates muscle growth. He is a walking, self-repairing dynamo. Section 2. The Great Fluorination Cycle. But a single creature doesn't exist in a vacuum. So how does a world of freezing acid and toxic gas actually sustain an entire living ecosystem? Well, it happens through a planetary engine, basically their version of photosynthesis. They have these glassy, brittle-looking silicon trees with fractal canopies that act as reverse respirators. Step 1, they absorb liquid hydrogen fluoride right from the soil. Step 2, they capture high-energy UV radiation from their distant blue sun. Step 3 is where the magic happens. They cleave that aggressive solvent apart, keeping the hydrogen to build their structures. And finally, step 4, they vent pure, deadly fluorine gas back into the atmosphere. This cycle is what fuels the highest tiers of evolutionary life on their planet. Section 3. The carbon-water nightmare. Now, to test this quote-unquote absurd carbon-water theory, Vaelen and his assistant, Lyra, boot up a quantum supercomputer. They're pushing their engines to the absolute limit to simulate a highly improbable world where life theoretically evolves using liquid water as a solvent and carbon as a backbone. And yeah, you guessed it. They are simulating Earth. They're simulating us. So the simulation sets the baseline temperature to 20 degrees Celsius. For us, that's what? A perfectly mild spring day. But Vaelen is absolutely horrified. To an Aethelgardian, 20 degrees Celsius is an absolute inferno. It's apocalyptic. At that temperature, their oceans would violently boil, the atmospheric kinetics would literally vibrate their molecular machinery to pieces, and their flesh would melt right off their fluorite bones. Section 4. Why human chemistry fails. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Vaelen imparts his ruthless, totally impartial critique of human chemistry. This thought experiment forces us to look at our biology not as some marvel of nature, but as a horrific engineering disaster. First off, liquid water is aggressively nucleophilic. That means it has this innate, unstoppable desire to attack and shear chemical bonds apart. We live in a solvent that is actively trying to dissolve us. Second, our carbon bonds are incredibly weak and easily auto-oxidize. Third, breathing oxygen causes slow cellular rusting. We're constantly bombarded by reactive oxygen species.
Add in the ambient heat of 20 degrees, which guarantees constant mutations, and to Vaelen, we exist in a perpetual state of decay. Even our genetic memory is a nightmare to him. Vaelen watches the simulation in sheer horror, as our fragile DNA bonds are continuously sheared apart by the harsh polarity of water, causing these astronomical error rates. Just compare that to Aethelgard's FNA, fluoronucleic acid. It's a tightly bound triple helix, fully shielded by dense fluorine atoms, making it entirely immune to thermal vibration and radiation. As Vaelen sees it, their genetic code is eternal. Ours is a lottery. And then Vaelen looks at our nervous system. He just can't believe it. He practically yells, "Sodium and potassium in water? But those metals react explosively." He is in a state of sheer disbelief. He realizes that human nervous systems actually rely on pumping these bulky, highly reactive metals back and forth across cell membranes, while desperately using little lipid bilayers to keep the water from violently reacting with the bare ions. And because of this incredibly inefficient, dangerous workaround, our brain functions are severely limited. Water is so polar it heavily hydrates the ions, creating this massive drag. Our action potentials, our thoughts, they agonizingly crawl. Compare that to Aethelgardians, whose neural impulses travel at the speed of sound through highly insulated nerves. Put bluntly, we are literally sluggish thinkers simply because we have to think in water. But here is the grand finale of the simulation. Suddenly, the holographic Earth starts flashing red and completely crashes. Why? Well, because the liquid water in the simulation occasionally drops below 0 degrees Celsius, and Vaelen discovers water's strangest, most fatal anomaly. When it freezes, it expands. Ice floats. To an alien chemist, this is paradoxical madness. Inside the cells of the carbon beings, these expanding ice crystals act as microscopic daggers, instantly rupturing and destroying our cellular structures. The chemistry is just too hostile. The instability causes a massive data overflow, and the simulation just goes completely dark. Section 5. A beautiful, fragile lottery. So the crucial point is, what does all this mean for us? Vaelen drafts his final report to his council, and it's a definitive official rejection of our existence. He concludes that carbon-water life is fundamentally untenable. The chemical bonds are just way too weak for stable genetic memory, the liquid solvent is violently destructive to cellular boundaries, and the thermal parameters, they guarantee a life of continuous, agonizing biological degradation. He concludes that being a creature of carbon and water means being a victim of the universe, fighting a constant losing battle against heat, hydrolysis, and oxidation. So I want to leave you all with a final question to think about. Vaelen is built to endure eternity, right? Forged in the frozen fires of the ultimate element. We, on the other hand, are quite literally made of the very fuel we burn. We live in a solvent that wants to dissolve us. We breathe a gas that actively rusts us. So, is our incredibly unstable, against all odds biology a tragic cosmic flaw? Or is the fact that we survive, adapt, and even thrive despite this molecular chaos the universe's most beautiful, defiant miracle? Let that sink in the next time you take a breath or take a sip of water. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning everything.
Please like and subscribe.